Welcome to episode 31 of Universe Extended, the Planning Phase Syndicate discussion about all things Star Wars. Tonight, we're going to be covering Ahsoka, episodes 2, 3, and 4, because we're a couple of weeks behind. But what I want to make sure you all know is that this is a spoilers intended podcast for the next hour. Joining me tonight is Tim. How are you tonight, Tim?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good. It's a little early for me usually, but just getting off of work makes things. I get to watch Ahsoka and talk about my favorite stuff without having to have any other time to forget about it. So
it's
great
really
for me.
fun. It's really fun to talk Star Wars and to talk Star Wars with other people that want to talk Star Wars instead of me just going around and being like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something." like, who are you stranger? Leave me alone. Take your hands off of me.
Fair enough. Also joining me is my co-host from Planning Phase Syndicate, JJ. Where is your lion's hat? Gridiron.
So I gotta find out. Like, can you send me a delivery notice, because I've checked my mailbox and I don't see it, dude. Like, it's not there. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, man.
That is crazy.
So
Tim,
shenanigans. I know you missed it. We made a bet about lions and giants, and JJ now has to wear a lion's hat for the rest of the season.
For the rest of the season.
and playoffs.
Yes.
and Super Bowl.
They're not making it to the Super Bowl. Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Well, no more football talk. Joining us tonight is Tim Wright, and Tim, we have a pleasure to have you back on. We haven't had you on it's got to been since Mando. Was it Mando?
Yeah, I think it's probably been a year, maybe more than a year. I've lost track of all ever since COVID. I don't know how to even look at calendars anymore. It's just all been like, it's the after times right now, when that was and then there was the before times, and then there was that dark 2-year period. And I know we're in the part that comes after the dark 2-year period, because things are a little bit brighter now. But
fair enough. Yeah. So Tim joins us. If you don't know Tim from Crabrock's channel,
Crabrock. No, that's the joke. It's Crab. I like Crabrock. I'm gonna have to get that domain name now.
You should, and then we can put little pictures of your face on crabs, and they can just kind of run around and do Star Wars things.
We'll do a rock band. We'll have a crab that's a drummer.
But anyway, Tim is joining us tonight, and we're gonna get right to it. We're gonna be talking some Ahsoka season 1. Hopefully, there's a second. We don't know, but probably not. But maybe we'll get lucky. But we're gonna be talking episodes 2 through 4 tonight. Mm-hmm. JJ, why don't you kick it off with us? Tell us where we left off last week and what we're gonna talk about tonight.
So where we left off was the initial battle between Shin and Sabine Wren, and leaving us with her with Shin ending up basically impaling Sabine with her lightsaber, and we got a great view there of her pretty much missing the majority of her internal organs. So in other words, she fared a lot better than Qui-Gon Jinn. and we knew immediately, right? Because as soon as she got impaled, all of a sudden she's still swinging her lightsaber, trying to back her off, swinging and stuff. And I'm like, okay, there's hope. She's still, she's angry enough that she's going to survive this. So, she's going to be okay. So we start off episode 2 with with her in the hospital. And Ahsoka is off out to the area where the battle happened. And we actually get a scene of Ahsoka walking through the area where the battle happened. And you can see her extend out her hands, and she's using the Force to essentially pull a Killen boss, which, if you haven't read the Dark Disciple book, he had the ability to use the Force to view the past of objects.
Psychometry.
The psychometry. There you go. Yeah. And she's essentially using this, and it's really interesting to see this in live action and how they pull that off, with her being able to use the Force to view the past and how things are happened. What do you guys think of that?
I was surprised. I didn't think that I didn't think that she had that ability. That's supposedly something very few Jedi have. Cal Kestis in the Fallen Order and the series of games seems to have that too, and they kind of make it a point that that's like, oh, this is my special power, and and I didn't know she had that. So it's, at first I was like, oh, that's kind of a thing, but I'm not annoyed about it. It's still it made for a cool scene.
Yeah, I think that like slowly with the Disney Plus shows, we're starting to see a lot more uses of the Force that have only been discussed in books, and I think that's really great for them to, you know, slowly expand the abilities of the Force. You know, we've seen in Rise of Skywalker, Rey being able to use the Force to heal wounds, and that was also replicated with Grogu in Mando, and now it's using the Force to use that ability
And
like
to
Ahsoka
teleport
did.
lightsabers behind your back, you know.
Oh yeah, that's right. The teleportation.
That's
Yeah,
a really
exactly.
cool one because I would just put it like inside my opponent and turn it on, you know. It's like a
Hey, I left
lightsaber
my
comes
lunch
at
at
you.
home.
Yeah.
Can you teleport it to me? Sure.
Yeah. Oh man. It'd be great.
So yeah, so so Ahsoka adventures eventually back to the area where she sees the hologram of Ezra Bridger, and then is able to capture the one of the HK droids that assaulted Sabine and kept its head. Then we cut back over to Cetos, where we see the former Night Sister use Sith. Essentially,
Which
the Night
magic?
Sister witch magic,
Yeah.
yeah, to unlock the orb there. Apparently, you have to heat it to like 300 degrees Kelvin in order for it to display the the map. And it's really interesting seeing this in live action, right? Because the only thing we've seen similar to this was what Star Wars Rebels, when they used like that the Night Sister magic to, I guess, summon the or imbue people with their power, like
Yeah.
Savage Press.
Or when they raised all the zombies or
Oh yeah, when they raise all
yeah.
the zombies. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool one.
Well, you
Yeah.
know, it sucks too. They had that Star Wars Destiny game, and right before it got canceled, you got the Night Sister, and you were able to like have like an army of dead Night Sisters. It was like
That's
insanely
right.
hard to get off, but you could like resurrect all of them. And there was like this weird little gimmicky thing. If you did it just right, you could have like 6 of them out on the table at once.
Oh man, that's really cool. They actually just released Night Sisters for Shatterpoint too, and so I'm like, man, they're like, I really want them to show up in more things like
Yeah.
Legion and stuff like that. Like there's a lot there, you know,
Well, I
especially with
think
the video games too, like building on the
Yes.
Dathomir. It's cool.
I
Yeah.
think we thought that they were all dead. So spoiler alert, but we kind of thought they were all dead, and now all of a sudden they're kind of coming back. You know,
They're just hiding.
We thought all the Jedi were dead too, and apparently there's like 1,000 of them. So
exactly. Yeah. So we finally get to see, you know, we get to see the ball expand, and we see the map of I guess of the galaxy there, and it points to the direction of an adjacent galaxy, where we see it covered with a sign of like all these Purgil over there, and that's where they say that that's where Thrawn is waiting. And we get this moment where she closes her eyes, and you can hear like some background like noises, and she says, "Thrawn is calling to me through space and time." When she said that, I was like, we do know that Thrawn doesn't have the Force, right? Like,
well. So having read the books, in some of the books, like they talk about like the Chiss and how only the females have the Force,
yes,
and they call them Skywalkers. But like they mention like, well, has a male ever had it? And there was like a quick like a throwaway line or something how it was like exceedingly rare, and I've always had that wonder like if Thrawn was you know, like
Force
had
sensitive.
latent Force a bit. I mean, they certainly go through measures to explain that since we are all part of the living force, anyone can, at least with time and study, can potentially do it. So
Interesting.
I won't rule it out that he could have learned a little bit about the force. I mean, he is with Ezra after all. Maybe like they got out there and they were bored and they're like, well, you want to play a board game? And then they got into talk, and then, you know, maybe they let bygones be bygones. And Ezra's like, well, hey, you want to learn how to talk to Night Sisters? Because you know,
well,
I
Tim,
don't know.
I think one of the big questions, right, that pops up, right, and so JJ and I have argued about the Force sensitivity of Sabine and whether she's ever going to yield it or not. But I think when you mention, hey, everybody has the ability, they can do these different things. I think that they've been laying that precedent throughout the books that I've read, at least for the last, you know, like 10 years. But I think with Thrawn, the interesting piece is that if you think about how he tactically deduces like all of his war schemes and things like that, like it's almost like he has some premonition of some sort, or some foresight, or something that he's able to utilize to be able to present all the different options and paths for a battle. And that's kind of what the books make it feel like with him.
Sometimes, yeah, that could be possible. I will admit, I feel like that would be a cop out though if they did that. I don't think I would be as happy because I want Thrawn's abilities to be because of his mind. I want his abilities to be because of his study and dedication. I don't want it to be, oh, he was good because he had magic. You know, what I think would be really cool is if it turned out that she was mistaken and that it was someone else calling
Yeah.
to her.
Oh,
Well, and I think we aren't quite to episode 4, but for Christ's sake, I'm going to say at least through episode 2 and 3, we don't have a visual yet. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're halfway through the series almost, and there has not really been a big visual other than trailers for Thrawn. So it leads me to think that they use this as a selling point, it feels like so far, for this
Yeah.
series rather than like a bigger point, which is okay because like the name of the show is Ahsoka, right? That's really who we're here to see. But those of us that are Thrawn fans, you know, I mean, for me, it's a little bit harder not to want that. I mean, I played Armada specifically because it has Thrawn in it. That's it.
Yeah, no, I love Thrawn. He's I have a son who's on the spectrum, and I always thought that Thrawn kind of represented that, like, a possible autistic superhero slash villain kind of character. And I love, since representation is like a big deal now, I just thought like that would be really awesome if that's like that. And it really does kind of apply, especially when you get into the books about how he would be like socially awkward but tactically brilliant. It really works. And loving Thrawn, I just really want to see more of him. And I'm like, I'm gonna be really annoyed if it's like all we get is that one little clip of him at the very end.
I
Of the
know,
last
me
episode.
too. I have that fear that that's what's gonna happen, and then they'll save all the Thrawn content for the upcoming Filoni movie.
I mean, they said the thing in the trailer. They said heir to the Empire. They showed Thrawn in the trailer, so the whole show seems like this is going to be a Thrawn show. And granted, it's not called Thrawn, so you have a point. But yeah.
Well, I think moving on into the episode, right? So then we see Ahsoka essentially talking with Hera. We talked through some of that. I think, like the next piece is we get Sabine, right? And it's like this commitment. Is Sabine going to come back? Are we going to get to see Sabine jump back into the scene here? And this is kind of a hotly contested scene because the next scene we get is Sabine essentially making the decision as everybody's trying to leave that she wants to rejoin Ahsoka. And this is where we officially learn that she's actually was some sort of an apprentice to Ahsoka. Because at the very end of Rebels, you see that little glimpse, right? This tiny little glimpse into, is she not? What is going to happen? And she disappears with her. We officially get it. And then she does the whole Kanan sequence. She cuts her hair short again, which must be a Mandalorian thing or a Sabine thing. I don't know which, but she does the exact same sequence minus the shaving of her face.
Yeah, right.
To what Kanan does at the end of Rebels before the foreshadowing of Kanan essentially sacrificing himself for the greater good. So Tim, what did you think of that scene with Sabine? Does it really bring anything up? Is it just more of a filler point, or do you think that it's going to have some significance?
I like the ritualistic nature of it. It's a very like a going into battle. Like she, and I hope it's not foreshadowing because I think like it'd be a shame to just introduce this character to such a wide audience only to then immediately kill her off. But that certainly could be something that happens. But I mean, I just really like seeing her put on the armor in live action. That was a really good moment because I didn't like that she didn't have the armor on throughout like up until this point. So I'm like, here we are 2 episodes in. She's a Mandalorian. She's not wearing anything. And so now all of a sudden, we got the armor on and it looked good on her. It was nice to see.
Yeah, definitely seeing her put on the armor again and actually first bringing it out and assembling it. And you can see that she's painted over her pauldrons again, seeing the mask repainted again, like seeing all those pieces. It feels like a old Sabine, but with like new highlights, and it feels very very nostalgic, and it helps like show where she's at mentally, right? Like she's ready to move on to the next part of her story, and she's got her gear and she's painted it to move on to what's coming up with new, and that's a really like nice point on it.
I hope we do see her paint at some point.
Yeah.
Probably won't be until like the final episode if they have a conclusion and then they do like a prologue or something like that. Because it's not appropriate right now, but it'd be nice if she had a chance to do some painting.
I mean, I fully expect her to vandalize the hyperspace ring eventually, with her paint. So
that would be cool. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, so if we move on, we get to see a hyperspace ring, right? Like, and essentially that is the culmination of what we used to see Ada's, go into. I mean, Anakin and Obi used one of those. I don't remember too much from the books about them. I don't think they were ever like a big point in the books, but I could be wrong, I guess. But it was nice to see essentially the theory going out of this episode is that we are getting something that can travel, and we're putting two and two together that they're going after, our assumption is Thrawn, while Sabine and Ahsoka and Hera want to go after Ezra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, this thing being in the shape of a hyperspace ring, it's not meant to just go get Thrawn, but it's meant to bring the Seventh Fleet back. And the problem is, like, I feel like, okay, how many episodes is this show? 8? I think it's supposed to be 8 episodes. All right, we're halfway through. There's not. What would be really cool is if there was fear of like another enemy, maybe Thrawn's in the middle of a battle, and then this, with the Grisk or whoever else, it is, and that the new enemy is going to potentially get the hyperspace ring and then invade, and so like they're like, oh, this backfired on us. Like that would have been so cool, but there's no way there's enough time for any more like crazy plot twists at this point. So
I'm actually wondering on that, right? Because the size of this particular ring, they put in 8 Superstar Destroyer engines on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a massive ring. Like this looks larger than what would fit around a Star Destroyer. Now we saw in Mando season 3, Paleon was part of the whole like secret council with Moff Gideon.
Oh yeah,
when
he's
they're talking
here,
about
isn't he?
Yeah. So it makes me wonder that not all of the Seventh Fleet has been lost, and part of it has either returned or they would just transport it to a different spot where they were able to, I guess, escape the clutches of the Virgil. So, like, I wonder if it really is intended for the Chimera, or if there's a larger ship or another ship that they're going to go grab.
Well, there's another Super Star Destroyer that exists. It's
That's
the Eclipse.
That's right.
Now, in canon, according to the books, the Eclipse is an executor class, so it'll probably look just like a Super Star Destroyer if we see one on screen. Granted, we've gotten multiple shots of the New Republic fleet right now, and so I think they could be building up for a big space battle, and I am itching for
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And no Starhawk though, right? They were all destroyed.
I don't know if yet by this point in time. I mean, I would imagine
because Jakku's already happened, right?
Yeah, I thought only one went down with the Ravager, so there should still be 2 more.
I think one was destroyed, which led to the second one with the gate led to get destroyed.
Yeah, a gate pulled one down with the Unity, and then there was. I know there were 2 more, but
I don't know if the third one survived. Yeah, you're right.
They could have always built a few more too before the de-arming stuff. So
yeah,
I guess they're still ripping apart Star Destroyers, so it's still definitely feasible that they could be building Starhawks. But
right,
but I like the new ships. I was looking them up, and the new Republic cruisers. They're calling it in a lot of places it's being called an unidentified New Republic cruiser. Or the Vesper was the name of it, but I don't have it looks very MC30, MC, know. So maybe it'd be like an MC35 if you were to get the nomenclature for it or something like that. But I don't know. It's speculating. We'll get it eventually. There'll be a book that comes out for the show, and then we'll have like, I love that stuff. I'm like, what did they decide? Give me their table scraps. I want to eat them up.
Yeah. So, moving on to episode number 3, we go back to Sabine now in full training mode, practicing her slashes with what looked like a kendo sword, right? Against Hyung, who apparently had 2 additional arms that I completely forgot about, and it looked like a whole Grievous battle. And he was using these training, I guess, lights where it would just highlight where her slashes were, and it would identify the correct slash versus the incorrect slash. And I thought that was such a cool piece of training that they were showing for like lightsaber training at this point there. What do you guys think of that?
Very cool. I liked it. I loved the whole scene. It was I mean, shoot, it definitely had Grievous written all over it. Like my kids were like, General Kenobi.
Well, I think the funny thing too with that is I didn't know he had 4 arms.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah,
I don't remember that in
Clone Wars.
Clone Wars, but
yeah,
maybe it is there. And I actually just rewatched the Clone Wars. I don't know. It was probably a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. I rewatched them. And then I watched Rebels and then Resistance. And then I actually just finished Rebels because of the show. But I don't remember ever this bloody little droid having 4 arms ever. But he would be an addition. I don't think he's in Legion. But that would be like a great addition to have.
Especially after today, after the 4th episode, which I don't want to jump too far ahead. But yeah, it's good that there's a lot of foreshadowing. Like if they show you something, it's probably for a reason.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I definitely want him to like, bring out like all the youngling lightsabers, especially since they showed that Ahsoka had a bunch of lightsabers on the wall. Like I want to be like, okay, well, it's time to go into insta kill mode.
Well, and you got to think, if he trains them, he has to be proficient, right? Like, I mean, logically, he has to be a proficient battle droid. He just has to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I guess not a real battle droid, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But we've never seen him fight ever. So,
well,
yeah. And then
up until this point, we haven't.
Up until this point, we have not.
Yeah, we haven't seen him fight. Yeah, you're right.
So
then afterwards, we get a nice scene where where Ahsoka brings out the blinder for Sabine, so that way she can learn to use her instincts in order to be proficient with the blade. And it's very, very reminiscent of A New Hope, where Obi-Wan Kenobi is teaching Luke how to use the lightsaber and puts the blast shield in front of his face so that we can't see. And just having those moments where Ahsoka would talk and then they use the audio clue to show that she's moved behind her, and you're essentially like looking at the scenario from Sabine's point of view, where she's trying to essentially strike Ahsoka as part of the training. And we get little hints here and there of like Sabine kind of using her rage in order for her to try to get more power to strike her, and Ahsoka is able to redirect her and like have her fall and trip and stuff like that. Like, what do you guys think of that? Like, do you think that we got a little bit of the dark side there coming out of Sabine?
I don't know. I think it was more frustration. I don't know. I don't think it was dark side, because I don't think she's really in tune yet.
Yeah, and I think that's JJ's trying to get you to side with him, that he doesn't believe she has any ability to touch the Force. So that's what he's working very hard to get somebody to agree with him.
No, I'll never do that, because I think everybody has the ability to touch the Force at least a little bit. And I go back to Rogue One. Look at Donnie Yen, right? Chirrut. Anyway. Yeah, Chirrut. He's not like levitating apples across the dinner table or anything like that, but he was definitely in tune with it. But that would also represented probably a lifetime of study for somebody who probably had no aptitude but managed to make lemonade out of lemons. And so that's kind of what I think Sabine is working on. We may see her move something a little bit or do something moderately insignificant, but I think the important thing will be is if she can become in tune with the Force. That would probably help her predict an enemy's movements at some point, so just a little bit of an edge.
And there is some foreshadowing for episode 4, because there is something that makes you think that, and then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
JJ can admit at the end of this that I was correct.
All right, so then we move on to Hera's meeting aboard Home One, where she goes to request from the New Republic's council to assist with deploying the military in order for them to find out this new threat that's coming up. And we get to see the return of Mon Mothma, which we last saw her in the Andor series, and we also got to see Senator Ziono make a live action appearance. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with who Senator Ziono is, he's actually the father of Kaz Ziono from the Resistance show that was not the best, but it was definitely a piece of Star Wars lore that we got to see during the basically like the side story of like the rise of the First Order and the events of Episode 7. So it was nice to see that part come out to live action.
I have a question on this one. Did you? I never actually finished Star Wars Resistance, but I remember, Kazuda Xiono talking about his dad being a senator. I think he made an appearance or two by a hologram, and being like a disappointed father or something. But I seem to remember like some kind of scandal related to him. So I don't know if viewers who've seen Resistance would be like, oh, this guy's actually working for the First Order, or if he's just kind of a normal guy who's loyal to the New Republic, who's just a scumbag.
So in the Resistance show, he was very anti-Kaz joining the Resistance because he felt that they were a group of just fanatics that just wanted to use their military ability to go ahead, to essentially, it's an excuse to waste military resources. And it wasn't. They did go on in season 2 to show that he did survive the attack on Hosnian Prime, and later gives his support for Kaz to join the Resistance and help fight the First Order. So we do see that end part of his arc up there, but we don't see anything on beyond that because Resistance ends at the end of season 2. So we don't know his fate beyond that.
So he's basically just somebody who's very much opposed. He's legit and maybe a little inexperienced, according to Hera's like blazing rebuke of him in front of everybody else.
Ooh, exactly. And it's really interesting to see that because you start, especially if you've read the books for like Bloodlines or for Aftermath, you get to see where the New Republic's mindset was going after the Battle of Endor. They're very much into the demilitarization for the army of the New Republic. And they are very, very much opposed into going into further military action because they are so opposed into going into another war. And that's what they acted on so much on this. And we get to see that interaction between Hera, who knows that this is a very, very big threat that's coming to the New Republic. And they're just basically tying her hands and not being able to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then I think as we move on to the next scene, we have a scene with Jason Syndulla, right? So
yes,
the future of the franchise, right there.
Exactly. Yeah. So somebody's like, how do we make this kid the next face? So we don't have to go out and find somebody later. I will say, out of this, the most interesting thing is just Chopper. I'm sorry, I don't care what anyone says. Like, here's Chopper just following you around and like, so he's got green hair, kind of like so there was rumors.
That's a great green. So it's really good
it's
hair
great
dye.
Green. Yeah. I wish they would show his ears because they showed that his ears were a little more extended than like a regular human would be in the end of Rebels. But they gave him like really long wavy hair to like cover his ears. So yeah.
Yeah,
and his Leiku are totally hidden.
Yeah. we don't know because have we seen like younger ones? I don't know.
So in the Clone Wars, you had the one clone who rebelled and was with.
That's right.
And those children, now from the story that I've read about, like the behind the scenes or that or whatever, like she already had kids. Like her husband had died, so he married. So he was, he wasn't actually the baby daddy. But I was just like, well, no, Twi'lek children, even hybrid Twi'lek children, have Leiku, but no, I guess they weren't hybrids in that case. And frankly, this is just an easier way to use him and not have to deal with as much makeup and the costs of CGIing his effects and stuff. It's just like, hair dye, that's $5. Let's go.
Yeah, and that's in fairness, that's what they did at the end of Rebels, right? Like we get the brief clip, and anyway, there was rumors they were not going to do the hair dye stuff, but here we are. He's got the green hair. It's close enough to the TV show to
he can talk to his aunt Sabine, and she can dye his hair any color, right? Exactly. Like it'd be super easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we go on forward to where Sokka and Sabine and Hyung take their Jedi shuttle to go to the area Cedos, where they're trying to track down where the map to Thrawn is, and then they get ambushed when they come out of hyperspace, and we got to still hear one of the ships that was attacking that. This like got me excited for a hot second because it looks like a blend between the Fireball from Resistance and the Belba Lab from the Clone Wars. Just with those wings and those engines and stuff. And I was like really excited. This looks like a refurbished Separatist ship that's attacking them on this. What do you guys think of this?
I thought Fireball right away. Yeah.
But
it was like wanting to freeze frame, but I was watching with the family, and they're not gonna like let me when I'm watching with the whole family. They're like, oh, like no, Daddy needs to geek out some more. No, let the episode go.
Yeah, I think I thought Fireball as the same as y'all did, but also if you look at the way that hers Yishin specific ship is too, hers is different. So it's almost like we kind of got two ships instead of the one. And the one looks like it's just a modified Beelzebub, right? Like that's like that's what I feel. But it's like they wanted to do, and this is gonna drive people nuts because if you go back to the Book of Boba Fett and you look at those stupid like riders
the
that everybody
cars, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
The hot rods, yeah.
You didn't like the American Graffiti? I mean, that's like the George Lucas special. You know, like it's the most George Lucas thing they've ever done.
It really is, yeah.
I know it's not my thing, but anyway, but that's what
I get that.
Yeah,
I feel that's what they did to this ship. Like they have two sets of them. We get the Fireball-esque ones, and now we got this weird Grievous Beelzebub. You know, like hybrid with. That somebody said, "Hey, let's make it look like the 50s." Like we thought that was a good idea.
Yeah.
I think this whole scene with them making the attack run on the ring was. I apologize if you guys disagree, but I thought this was like one of the worst scenes I've seen. It had all the hallmarks of what could have been a space battle, and it was just like, oh, let's just keep the shields up, and oh, we're dead. Like, I don't know, like had the ship dead to rights and still didn't kill it. So it was just, I don't know. It was just so, it could have been more of a dogfight. It could have been more action oriented. And it was really just will the shields hold? And I'm like, oh, you could have done so much more.
It felt like Rebels. That's what that felt like, right? Yeah. It felt like a cartoon caricature rather than some of the live action stuff we've seen in the past.
Yeah. Like Poe would have been like, no, let me spin this thing around and we're going to do this other stuff. Anakin would have been like, I'm going to clip you. And I'm going to ram your ship just enough to throw you off course. And but like Ahsoka's just like, let's just fly straight and hope the shield's hold. I'm like, oh, come on, man, do some dogfighting.
And here's the thing, right? Like I wondered about the armaments on that ship, right? Because it looks like the only guns that they have on that ship is just that single turret on the back of it, right? And they have to literally turn the ship in order for it to like aim at different angles. I'm like, this is not really a good ship to go onto these type of missions. You want to at least have some type of ordnance somewhere, because when the ships flew past them, that would have been a perfect time to take a shot. And that ship had no weapons in the front whatsoever. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a plan. Like, hey, let them get in the back of my ship and take shots at me before I can adjust and take shots back at them. It doesn't seem like a really good design.
It would have been a great opportunity for them to show something new. Like, all right, we're going to do a micro hyperspace jump, and then just like, poof, like just jump like two clicks ahead, and all of a sudden they're like, wait, where'd she go? Oh, she's up there and they're shooting at us. Like do something cool like that. That might have like broke the internet. And they're like, wait a second, you can't do micro hyperspace jumps. And I'm sure it's happened in a book already anyway. So.
Yeah, not to mention, we get a scene as they're approaching the hyperspace ring that it has, turrets on it, and they're actively taking shots from these turrets, and it's already been like hammered by all these fighters taking shots at it. Just how powerful are the shields on that ship to take that much beating, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, maybe are they force powered?
Yeah, there you go. Spent a force, recovered 2 shields. Yes.
I want to ask you guys something about the ship, and maybe you talked about this in the last one. Because I don't know if it was episode 1 or 2, but like when Sabine goes on Ahsoka's ship, there was a scene where she's looking at like these drawings in one of the bunks, right? Like these little, and I'm like what was that meant? Like, did you guys did anybody catch that? And I know it's off topic of this particular scene, but who I almost thought it was like it was I think the audience was going to think it was like she was remembering Ezra, but like Ezra didn't really doodle. Maybe it was something like when Sabine was on this ship, she was doodling, but like it looks like the
Yeah,
drawings of a child, and she wasn't a child back then. So
yeah.
like you think that's what it was, or
Yeah, that's how I took it. I took it that that was the first drawings that Sabine did when she became her first the apprentice the first time.
okay,
But you're right; it does look like it's the drawings of a child, so it just looks really off character for it. Like if it was Sabine.
yeah,
So yeah,
because
like
this is also like Sabine, according to like Rebels timeline, she should be like 30 by now, but like
yeah.
she's acting like a 20-year-old who who's coming back to somebody she knew when she was 16 or something. So it's yeah,
My
okay.
my other thought is that the ship is not Ahsoka's. My other thought is that that ship actually belongs to Hyung, and since he trained younglings, maybe that's their drawings on the ship.
Could be. That's a great idea. I
Yeah.
think it could take it either way. All right.
All right. So we get a moment where the Jedi ship goes through the ring and somehow they lose track of it, all the sensors, even though they know exactly where they went. And then the ship the ship loses the shield, and with it, Hyung, who is doing a scan of the hyperspace ring. And we get this really bad photo that I put in there. But essentially, Ahsoka decides to go on a spacewalk and then decides to do her spacewalk lightsaber deflection of all the shots there, where Sabine eventually regains power and rotates the foils of the ship in order to catch her from flying off space. It felt a little weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
The suit for Sabine or for Ahsoka felt
It was dumb. Can we just say
yeah
it? I
yeah
thought this was stupid.
yeah.
It
I
was, I
felt like it was
agree.
really off.
It was bad, but at the same time, it's one of those times where I'm really glad that I have the ability to just sit back, shrug it off, and say,
Yeah.
I'm gonna choose to enjoy this scene as ludicrous as it may be. It's fine, but it's not good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then finally, they make it into the atmosphere to Cetos, and then we get the appearance of the live action Purgle emerging from the clouds, and they use the cover to go in to hide from their pursuers. And then finally, we get this shot of Balin, who's waiting at the ring, saying, they have to, it's time, and they're going to go hunt them down. And that's what rounds out the episode for episode 3. Episode 3 being so far the shortest episode out of the series so far.
Yeah. Yeah. Disappointed with that short length. I'm like, man, is this how everything? So we really only have like 2 hours of show left, So
Yeah, exactly. And then let's push for episode 4. We're almost there. So
yeah.
we start off right where we left off in episode 3. The crew is there. They're docked at the inside of the forest in Cetos, which we let her know they're about 10 kilometers away from where the ring would be. And we get this great scenery there. And I got to say, they did a fantastic job for the background for this, because this felt very anime to me. Having like what kind of looked like cherry blossoms in the background with
It's very pretty.
Ahsoka staring. It was fantastic. The setting for this was just awesome.
It's a type of
Really good.
landscape we haven't seen in Star Wars before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So then we get a scene where the both Sabine and Ahsoka are inside of the ship, like running diagnostics, and then we get Young, who gets attacked by the HK droid. Who they go into this fist fight here, and for a hot second, I'm like, man, I just really need him to use his extra arms and all of a sudden take out, the spare reserve lightsabers that he had and just cut this thing down. But unfortunately, he never got to, and he starts yelling for help, which causes Sabine and Ahsoka to come in and basically clear out all the droids there. I felt that I'm like, I really thought this was going to be his moment where he's going to show like a shred of badassery and just like take down all these droids with all the combat training that he knows. But it ended up being like a setup for Sabine and Ahsoka.
It was all right. He held his own.
He did.
Like,
He did.
I thought he did pretty good. And I have a feeling his programming is like do not kill. And so he was just like, almost had the sense of like he was getting frustrated. He's like, gosh, if only I was allowed to unload on you, you would be toast.
Asmodee's third law, no.
Yes.
Or Asimov's law. So then we get return back to home one with Hera, who in Hera fashion says, you know what, I don't need permission to go help my friends, and decides to leave the ship. And we get this great view of the live action Ghost and Hera and Jason and Chopper inside of the cockpit for the Ghost as they take off, and we get this beautiful scene of the New Republic fleet, where we get to see Home One with a couple of cruisers there. We get to see a CR-90. We get to see some of the new MC ships there. This was such a great scene, seeing in live action the Ghost return to the screen. What do you guys think?
Oh, I got a half chub right away. It was no, we got Nebulons there. We've got and then you had the X-wings. My biggest thing is, why is she bringing her son? I guess like you're going into.
Well, it turns out childcare is really expensive in the New Republic.
Yeah.
So yes.
I'm like, I would not be bringing him. Like have somebody else. And where's Zeb? Get Zeb.
Yes, exactly. So we see Carson there, right? He's flying his X-wing. When he shows up, I was like, yes, he's fine. He's flying it. That means Zeb is there, and they go through all the pilots. Nope.
I know. Dave Filoni wasn't there, right? Trapper
right?
Wolf.
Wolf
right?
Trapper.
His name was
Trapper Wolf.
Yeah. Come on, man. Come on, Dave. Come on, Dave. You can
man.
wear the helmet. You can fly. You can fly in the Ghost, and you could wear the hat. You can do it. We'd all be okay with that.
Maybe Zeb went to go get Callus from the planet.
Dude,
maybe
you're talking.
I hope that he
idea.
shows up by the end of the season. Like he really.
Maybe he's got the mutton chops Callus and.
Yes, the mutton chops Callus. Yeah, exactly.
So who plays Callus then? Who would you pick to play Callus? I mean, if we're gonna get a tangent like that, let's tangent, because I want to know.
That's
wow,
a really good one. No, that's not gonna work. But when I searched for mutton chops, I got Wolverine.
So the guy that plays Wolverine from
I was gonna say the guy who plays Sabretooth from the first Wolverine movie.
Yeah, maybe.
Leave Schreiber. There we go.
Yes.
All right. I want Patrick Waterburn, the guy that does the Tick and all the weird voices. That's who I want.
Yes. That's actually a good one. I think he could emulate Callus very well. I think so.
That'd be interesting. I don't know if he's got the look for it, but I mean,
yeah. So they jump into hyperspace, heading over to Cetos to try to track down this threat that's going on. And then now we're back to the planet where Ahsoka and Sabine come head to head with Marek and with Shin, and now we get the duel between the two here. I thought this was a great piece of cinema. The way that they did all the shots for this, they really built the tension really well for it. They did all the cinematography for the fights and everything really well. And we see Marek, who was very, very well trained in the Inquisitor arts, really relying on the twin blades and spinning it and everything. And we get a great shot of Ahsoka just being able to slice right through and take him out. And we see a moment where he's defeated, and you can see the saber blade right across his chest. And lo and behold, we see this green gas that comes out of him, which is exactly like the Night Sister magic that we've seen before in Rebels.
Is that what you think? You think it was that he was like a zombie?
So my theory so far is that this was actually the eighth brother, which, if you don't remember, at the end of season 2, when they're in the temple on on
the guy who escaped.
Alapar. Yeah, he escaped and tried to escape on his lightsaber, and then it blows up and he falls to his death. I think that's the same Inquisitor, and the Night Sisters use their magic to revive him and put him into their service.
Oh, well, it really put to bed all the theories on who is this guy. But before he dies, I want to go back to what you said about this scene being great. how many like Ahsoka went through about like 4 of the different like lightsaber forms. Like I mean, like she started like I think she went through like Ataro and Shicho and like all these. I'm like, wait a second, she knows. Like she did the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing, like exactly as he did it in Rebels when he fought Maul, and that was like, and that was how she and she killed this guy almost the same way too. Like she did a tremendous job with those stances. I think she did Vapad towards the end.
Yeah, she did Vapad style. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
It was really cool. Like what a great duel that was. One of the best, I will say. Really impressed.
Yeah, and so I guess if you go with the theory that he was raised from the dead, then I guess I could see the way she hits him. Because the other option would be is that it is just the gas stuff inside of that suit. That it is literally like a manifestation of some sort. Now this gets into like D&D territory, but I mean for Christ's sake, the the sisters are definitely on the outskirts of lore for Star Wars. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I really wanted it to be Sam Witwer in there and not Starkiller Reborn, but like just an Inquisitor who happened to be played by Sam Witwer, who would have been like a tribute to Starkiller. But I'm glad it wasn't a clone of Luke Skywalker, like a lot
or Ezra.
Or Ezra.
Of course, it wasn't going to be Ezra. Yeah, because nobody could come back from that except apparently, Captain Pelion did. So I was still really curious about how all that worked.
Yeah. And we get this this awesome shot with the rematch between Shin and Sabine, who are fighting off using their own lightsabers there. And finally, she tells Sabine tells Ahsoka to, go on ahead, that she's going to keep Shin occupied, and they have their own duel. And then finally, we get what I think was the star of this episode, which is Ray Stevenson interpreting Skull. And this was by far, I think, the strongest performance of an antagonist so far that we've seen. I think he performed just perfect in this particular episode.
He was a powerhouse for sure. Really good performance.
So I have to ask, and this has to be like a Star Wars thing. Like every time the enemy builds something, they got to put this long ass timer in here. Like we see this with the Death Star. We still have a Starkiller base. It's like, here, let's take 10 to 15 minutes to power up this kyber crystal of massive sorts to blow something up. And they just sit there and it's like, yep, we're just going to sit here, send a few TIE fighters, do a few things. Like it's crazy. Like I'm sitting here and like, this is what, like half the episode we're watching this counter go up. I mean, come on. Like this is ridiculous.
It was, it seemed like it was going really slow, and then like they were only like halfway, and then like all of a sudden, like I wonder what was left on the cutting room floor, because it felt like 30 seconds later, like, okay, we're done. I'm like, wait a second.
Exactly.
It was like 25 minutes to get halfway done, and then it was like 25 seconds to get the other half. So like
Exactly. Yeah. It was funny, right? Because like they showed this part, right, where it just barely gets past half, and then Ahsoka manages to remove the orb from its place, burning her hand when she does it, and then later on when it gets removed, they're like, oh, it's instantaneous, it's done, we're good. So like, really, like, come on. Like, and on top of that, they've obviously spent a good part of episode number 3, staring at this map, and I'm like, you guys should have taken the time then to upload the map to the ship that was obviously running. Like, why do you wait now?
Well, they had to install the last hyperspace engine, that's why.
Oh, you know what? It was running on Windows 11. They had to wait for the update. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was like one of those progress bars. It's like, oh, 99%. And then it waits like a half an hour. So that's why I get inconsistent timers all the way.
Yeah. Well, and then the one scene that we miss is because all of a sudden Ahsoka leaves, right? She goes back there. Where is Sabine? Sabine's still fighting Shin. And all of a sudden Shin bests her, right? And then we get the scene where she reaches out like she's going to do the Force. And you're like, holy crap. Like it finally happens. JJ's got to pay out the bet, and then then she uses her Mandalorian tricks to knock the lightsaber out of her hand.
Yes,
brilliant scene.
Yes,
yeah.
This scene was brought to you by Fen Rao. I just want to say,
Fen Rao
was the one who gave her the
The gauntlets,
wrist, the wrist gauntlets.
Wrist launchers. Watch those wrist rockets.
It was great, right? Because there was a moment where Shin, like, she does that, right? And Shin braces, like, waiting for it to come, and then she's like, "You have no power here." It felt like straight out of Lord of the Rings, like, "You have no power here." And then she uses that, and she knocks out her lightsaber. Now, my question is, did she destroy the lightsaber?
Maybe I think it was just like shorted out. Like it probably just needs a repair.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not broken.
You'll see her use it again. I mean, she didn't get killed in this episode, which means she's going to die in some kind of duel, and it's going to be awesome, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then we return to the duel between Balin and Ahsoka, and Ahsoka, it gets completely overpowered by Balin to the point that he knocks her off the edge there in front of Sabine, who's holding the orb hostage there. And then finally, we see Sabine threatening to destroy the orb, and Balin takes a moment, and it feels like he's using the Force to read her mind.
Yes.
And then uses his ability to manipulate her emotions. And he says something very curious. He says that he's upset with Ahsoka for the death of her family because her master didn't trust her. So that was a very curious piece of dialogue that he says there. And I wonder if in somewhere in between this time, Battle of Endor and here, we know that the purge happens with Moff Gideon, decimating Mandalore. Did they have advanced knowledge that this was going to happen, and Ahsoka did not let Sabine go?
Yeah, that's what my thought was. Like, she didn't trust you to go fight in the wars because you would have died too. Is like, but she'll feel like I could have made the difference, or I could have gotten them out, or something like that. I think that's probably where they were, what actually played out. But that was kind of crazy. And I'm like, I also knew there was no way she was going to shoot that thing. I'm like, come on. There was such a build up with the like, I'm like, oh, you're not going to do it.
Yeah. It was her only ticket to go see Ezra and to go find them. There was no way that she was going to blow that up. There was just no way.
I think it's not her only ticket.
Really?
And yeah. Well, I mean, all right. Well, I'll save it for the end of the episode. Because,
okay.
Yeah. All right.
So we advance forward where Balin and Shin take Sabine hostage and bring them aboard the ship, and they find Hera coming out of hyperspace with the rest of the X-wing squadron, and they go into hyperspace, sending all these X-wings careening into each other from the force of the hyperspace, from the ship going into hyperspace, and we see a couple of X-wings collide against each other. And I was, for a hot second, thought, man, they're going to kill Carson off by slamming him into the ghost, and thankfully he didn't.
Yes.
He's alive. He survived.
Well, and as soon as they brought like more than one X-wing, you're like, oh, okay, so we need some disposable X-wings because something's going to happen. Of course, like there's got to be something to make, like, hey, we need T-70s, so we got to destroy a bunch of T-65s. I'm sure, like when Hera was calling them, I was like, do you want T-70s or T-65s? She's like, oh, bring the T-65s. Yeah, we don't bring the T-70s.
Yeah, exactly. So we see that the Imperial forces managed to go into hyperspace, heading towards their destination with their coordinates locked in, and then finally, the end of the episode, we wake up and Ahsoka finds herself in the world between worlds.
Oh, how do you know that? You cannot guarantee that.
I mean,
we saw it. I saw it. It was that. It's definitely what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty conclusive that road that she's on and how everything kind of curves and anything like that matches pretty exactly what we saw in the end of season 4 of Rebels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to rewind just a little. Sure. I know because the world between worlds is the big thing, But when they went to hyperspace, how were you guys? I was thinking the whole time, like, oh, they're gonna get caught in the hyperspace bubble. Like that's how this plays out. Hera and the X-wings get also sucked, and now you've got like this tiny rebel cell against the 7th Fleet, and then that's how the rest of the season is going to play out. And Hera's like, how do we overpower the Star Destroyer with only 4 X-wings and the Ghost? But then Ezra gets on board and helps him. He's like, I know the weak spot. And like there you go. That's a whole episode. I thought for sure that was going to happen, and no, it
You need proton torpedoes, Hera.
Yeah, guys.
You need a gas cloud.
Jason will guide them in, and Hera. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Jason Syndulla using the Force to guide him through hyperspace. Oh, oh man.
So
no, that's not it. That's not it.
I agree with you though. I was very confused why they didn't get to go along with it. Like, to me, like in the past, or why it didn't just shred all the ships instantaneously. Like all of them
shot was 1 in a million, dude.
Gone.
It's nobody can do the Holdo maneuver except for Holdo. That was 1 in a million, right?
So
I guess.
So there is precedent, right? Because there's an episode in Rebel Season 4 where Hera takes the broken U-Wing and they put the TIE Defender hyperdrive in it, and she takes it to escape Lothal and essentially bring the rebellion to come and try to liberate Lothal. And there's a scene where she jumps into hyperspace through a hangar for one of the stations that they had up there for the Imperial hangar, and the force of her mass going through it essentially causes everything inside of the hangar to get forcibly pushed out into the open,
like a jet stream, right?
Yeah, exactly. So something similar would have happened with the ring. They essentially traveled through the open space through the ring, but the velocity of that mass of from the ring itself is what caused the ships to essentially tumble and smash into each other.
That makes a little bit of sense. It's better than them all dying, but it's not as cool as them going with. But I'll say this: if they had gone with, I'm thinking somebody's got to fly down to the planet and pick up Ahsoka, because she's gonna wake up in a pool, in a puddle, and she's like, "Oh no, I fell down," So I was like, "Oh, well, okay." They land, and I'm thinking to myself, the whales will take them. They showed the whales for a reason, not just as an Easter egg for Rebels, but they know that the Purgles go from this planet to there. And while that's cool, that also is it's like a big thing that I think people are going to complain about as they really sit down and think about it. I'm like, wait, you guys, the bad guys spent all these years trying to get this map and this technology and took all these risks to build this giant thing so they could go there, when the whales could have taken them all along if they would have just,
just had a conversation.
That's how these tropes kind of go. Is like the bad guys trying to do this impossible thing, like Episode 9 was the same way with like, oh, she's got the only map. Well, Kylo Ren can just fly there too because he can, and that's what they're going to do. And it's because they're going to probably ride on the Purgles and Jason might be the one to talk to the Purgles too.
That would be cool, actually.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
I'm jumping too far. I'm jumping into the future.
No worries. So at the end of the scene, right, we see Ahsoka hearing Anakin's voice, and when she turns around, she sees the younger unfallen Anakin, right? I guess you could say that.
Right? He calls her Snips.
And he calls her Snips. Yes, exactly, which is great.
I got goosebumps when he said that.
Yeah. So, all right, here's the debate here. Is this a Force ghost or is this a Force memory, much like Kylo Ren saw with Han Solo in Episode 9?
So when you all kind of like laughed at me about the world between worlds thing, that's the idea here, is because if this is a Force ghost, there is still a possibility that she's dead, right? And being given time to live. The probability of that's got to be low, right? But on the opposite scale, if this is the world between worlds, it's probably not a Force ghost walking on these little things. That was not a thing that we had seen per se in Rebels before, right? So the idea of the multiverse and the time traveling piece of it is now being interjected here. So Anakin can literally be time traveling in some weird way, shape, or form to come back and either help or warn her based on this.
So here's what I think. It's definitely not a Force ghost. And here's how you know it's not a Force ghost. We saw Anakin's Force ghost. Anakin wore white traditional Jedi robes in his Force ghost. He was the best version of himself. He wasn't wearing the black and brown. So this guy's wearing the black and brown, which is the flawed but still good-hearted Anakin Skywalker. So not really. I mean, granted, they could have just made a mistake and put the wrong Anakin in there. They wanted for more recognizable. But whatever universe he's from, I think it's definitely opening the door. I hope it's opening the door for a Star Wars multiverse, so we can hopefully get like a what if Star Wars one day. What if Luke and Leia had swapped places and Leia was the farm girl? And I want to see all of that played out. It'd be freaking awesome.
That would be great, actually.
But whatever universe this Anakin came from, he had excellent skincare products. Am I right?
It's all that the Bacta cream.
There was no, he came from a planet without any sand or heat. He came from like Camino or something. Yeah.
Camino introduces an interesting thing. Could it be a clone Anakin? Did somebody clone Anakin?
Oh, from the hand that Dooku chopped off.
Yep. I mean, there's lots of things.
Same thing they did with Luke, from the books, Heir to the Empire, which I already thought was Maruk, and not everybody.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
I think she's I think she's in the world between worlds, but I have no idea how she got there. And unless somebody pulled her like last time. And who could have pulled her? I don't think it would have been Anakin, but maybe he did pull her. Maybe he's a time traveling, a different version of Anakin. I mean, look, Hayden Christensen wants to come back. Maybe they're just looking for an excuse to do it. And they said, hey, we Rebels set up a lot of stuff that they're actually paying off, which is cool. And this could be another thing that they really set up deliberately. I mean, almost everything they do sets up a lot of future stuff, but most of it doesn't get paid off. Like we never went back to Solo and said, hey, what happened with Kira? Oh, what happened with these Marauders and Enfys Nest? We never went back and revisit all these things that were set up years ago. Here's something that they're going back and revisiting. And I can't wait to see where it goes.
And I think Catherine brings up a good point that if we think about it, when they were traveling in the world between worlds and they were interacting, it could have been anything from the past, because we see Ezra going in and pulling old Ahsoka somewhere. So what if Anakin did travel? Now, they said it's when they did the Mortis arc, right? But what if Anakin did do something like that and just doesn't know he's going to become Darth Vader yet? Which will make this interaction extremely interesting, because does Ahsoka tell? Does Ahsoka not tell? There's got to be a million questions she has.
And this was never in any of the trailers, so this is obviously a heavily spoiler moment. And whatever conversation proceeds is also obviously heavily spoiler. So definitely stay off the internet next Tuesday night if you until you can watch it, because I mean, I really hope they have a good conversation here. Yeah. But at the same time, not too long of a conversation, because I still want to get to Thrawn,
Yeah. So do you think we're actually going to finally see Thrawn and more for than 30 seconds for the next episode?
Not in the next episode. I don't think so. I think they'll take the next episode and then do a sidebar, and it'll be the one after that where I think the next episode will be mostly about how do we follow them? And then and Ahsoka's how do I deal with whatever, Anakin's about to say to her. He did say that he's been waiting for her, or something like that. So, I don't know. It's weird. I don't know.
So I have two last things real quick, and then we got to wrap this up, because I don't want, every time I do one of these and then we take 6 hours to talk about one episode and probably bore the hell out of people, but
could easily do that.
So two things, and I'll list them both off, and then we can kind of go in order. We'll let Tim go first, and then JJ after. But so a lot of people have given Star Wars crap, about not going after the fans. I feel Ahsoka is a very fan enthusiast show. There is so much stuff inside of here that if you don't know what's going on, it's a lot harder to follow. It's still, I feel, a very coherent story. And it's kind of one of those things, for me, it's when I pick a new book series up and you jump in and all of a sudden, like 2 chapters in, you're like, who is these 70 different characters? I don't know who the hell they are. But by the time you get to the end of the book, or you get to book 2, all of it makes sense and you're in love with all of them, right? Mm-hmm. So this, that's the first question is how do you all feel? Because a lot of people have accused them of going after and fan baiting in stupid and silly ways. Whereas this feels like all of the fan references and everything is not it's not just this slight nod to say, here, oh, we put Chewie in a uniform today, or stuff like that. So that's the first question, is how do you feel about that, and how do you feel how they're directing this series? And then the second question that comes in to kind of tailor off of, do you think we're going to see Thrawn, is do you think that we end up getting this Night Sister and Balin and all these people are not actually out to get Thrawn, to bring him back to rule the Heir, to be the Heir of the Empire? but that was just this big ruse that they're actually trying to bring him back to create to create a stoppable force, because they know somebody's cloning Palpatine. They know the Maxine warriors are being trained to become, these insane troopers that are now part of the rebellion. And that goes back to a Leia book. If you haven't read that yet, 100% should read that book. That book is amazing.
Yeah, Bloodlines.
Yes. But anyway, so those are the two questions. One, do you feel that this episode or that this series is too far in the weeds for the average person, or is this like the thing that we needed as the ultimate fans? And then the second question boiled down is, do you feel that these people are not actually the enemies in the long run, and they are coming back to try to help get rid of another Palpatine, or maybe another dimension? I don't know, maybe we're going to a whole new universe.
Well, all right. So I'll start off. I think the show would have benefited a little bit better by starting out with somebody just talking like hi, my name's Hera Syndulla. Years ago, I fought with, blah, 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 like a little bit of a prologue. It needed a prologue to set the stage, because there was too much of that exposition, and some of it was fan service. Like you're talking, like the Loth Cat was a little bit of fan service. By the way, she just abandoned that Loth Cat when she left there, but I guess they're wild, So like I feel bad if the Loth Cat's still locked in the house and like doesn't know how to use the can opener. So hopefully she let it outside first. But yeah, like Hera would have been the perfect narrator for like to tell the story so far. Like we needed that, because we also need a little bit of like, wait, when did Ahsoka start training Sabine, and when did it stop, and what can you tell us about that, as opposed to just a little bit of delayed exposition. So so while there's definitely some fan service, I think some of the fan service is not just cheap fan service either. Like having Hu Yang as a important and significant character, he was a throwback, but he's also a really important storytelling device by calling out, some people are going to think, wait, is Sabine a Jedi? And he's like, no, she's not. She's clearly not. Like, trust me, she stinks with the Force, So he's there to really advance the plot of the story as well as being a fan service. So a lot of that type of stuff is really good. There are obviously some fan service bits, but for the most part, I think those fan service bits are done really well. On to question number 2 with the Thrawn stuff, I have a feeling that the bad guys are the bad guys, that they definitely do want to bring him back, possibly try to put some witch magic on him to make sure that he, rewards them, and he's, that his goals align with theirs. But I think Thrawn's going to be the one who's just like, no, this is a way more important threat. Like, I'm not going to wage war on the New Republic. We need to wage war on the Grisk or whoever this, or maybe a new threat in this other galaxy. I think that's probably the bigger thing. And maybe he's like got a plan. Maybe he's exterminating whales, so he seems like a bad guy. And he's like, no, the reason I'm exterminating whales is because they're about to bring, this termite aliens back into our galaxy. So we've got to, and then they'll, or whatever would, threaten Chila or the Chiss people. So I think Thrawn's going to turn out to be, I hope Thrawn turns out to be like the hero-ish kind of, but still villain. Like, I'm doing what needs to be done, even though it's unsavory.
All right, JJ.
So for the first question, I think that, yeah, they definitely could have done with a prologue with explaining a little bit for it. But at the same time, I think it also slows down the story a little bit. And I could appreciate them trying to, like, the direction that they're going with right now, with like, you're familiar with the characters and we're not going to take time to explain them because it would waste an entire episode, and they just went straight into the action. And I do appreciate that, right? It does hinder the experience for the casual viewer, to not know who these characters are or why they're important. But at the same time, they're trying to get to the gist of the story and establish like the relationship, or what's left of these characters, where they're at, where their mindset is currently, by exploring the current events. And you kind of get a little bit of the story as the story progresses, right? As far as the second question, I'm very much of the belief that an antagonist in a story isn't always a villain. And you can see that with Balin, right? Balin, especially in his monologue with, or his dialogue with Ahsoka in the beginning, talks about, how he knew Anakin, and talks about how he knew how he fell and how very little people knew about it. And he also makes a brief comment about how he lost the faith, which is why he's not a Jedi anymore. And those are just little bits of information that we get that gives us a view into this character's motivation, right? Why they are who they are, because obviously they're using dark side powers, but they're not Sith. They still very much follow a lot of the Jedi principles with the way how he has Shin as his apprentice, and she still has like the little apprentice braid, or the I
Padawan
forget the
braid.
name, the Padawan braid, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's actively trying to teach her the ways of the Force, and kind of using both sides of the teachings, and probably leans a little more towards the dark side. But he doesn't quite strike me as a villainous character. He just strikes me as an antagonist, right? He's doing all this because this is a means to an end for him. I think that they'll do the same with Thrawn the same way, because as we know, Thrawn, he doesn't have a political agenda. He's just there to get results, for his ultimate goal, which is to protect his people and ultimately protect the Empire, because he swore an oath for that, to protect the Empire. And we've know previously in books that his loyalty has always been questioned, and he always wants to be loyal to both the Empire and to the Chiss ascendancy. So I think that hopefully, if we get enough time to really explore where Thrawn is, where his state of mind is right now, we'll get to see the culmination of that. Like, where is this going to lead Thrawn? And yes, he'll be an antagonist because he's loyal ultimately to the people that he swore loyalty to the Empire and to the Chiss, and that's going to put him at odds with the New Republic and the Jedi. So hopefully that plays out very well.
All right. So I'll leave you with this instead of going on a long preamble. I feel that this is definitely the fan service we needed. And I feel it still stands up and holds on to its own. And you don't need to know all the lore. It just makes this better. And I look at Andor, and we didn't get a bunch of stuff leading up to Andor to say, hey, do you know all these people? Does anybody watch Rogue One? Blah, blah, blah. And yet that was still a very entertaining story. This is just a Jedi story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel, personally, I feel people just want to complain. And that's my belief. And I would say if they want to give me another 4 episodes like they did with Andor and fill out the backstory, great. I don't think we're getting that, though. As for Thrawn, so this is all I'm going to say, because I have very strong feelings about my opposition to them trying to bring the Hera of the Empire Thrawn back. I did not. Once I got the new set of books, that's what I like. Here's what I'll leave you with. If you go back to those books and you go through the whole story of it all, one of the big things that happens at the very end of the last trilogy, you both read the trilogy, right?
Yeah. I read all of the new stuff, including the prequel stuff. Yeah.
Okay. At the very end, what happens? They send him
into exile.
Because they believe Jixtus is a larger threat than anything else. Thrawn is sacrificing his career, all of his stuff, to go undercover, and miraculously, guess who discovers and finds him? Just saying. To throw it out there, that I do not feel that Thrawn was any more loyal to the Empire than he had to be for his position. Rebels skews some of this a little bit with how he acts, but if you can ignore this like they have before, that's my feeling is what we're going to see.
The question is, which Thrawn are they going to do? Rebels Thrawn or the book Thrawn? Because if it's book Thrawn, I really hope it's book Thrawn.
I do too. Hence why I asked you the question of, do you really think that Thrawn's going to be the ultimate bad guy in the long run? They could be. This whole thing could just be setting up for what happens after Palpatine.
I sure hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Tim. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
If you don't know Tim, we'll have his YouTube channel in the links section inside of our thing. JJ, thank you for joining me this week and finally being able to catch up. When Sabine throws something with the Force, you'll owe me like $100, and we'll be all set. So, all right, thank you all. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week for another Universe Extended.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.